Gun shop employees, what are some red flags that caused you to deny a sale of a firearm? Viewer edition. All right, folks. Just gonna come out and say this. I'm going to get terms wrong, especially gun names and calibers and stuff. I grew up in a house that had a lot of guns. There were more guns than people, and I had 3 siblings and an uncle and cousin who were with us most of the time. I was raised on guns, and I don't know a thing about them, so I'm gonna get the stuff wrong. I don't know about your MLB 2237s or your WIIs. I don't know any of these stupid terms, so don't get at me in the comments because I don't know your terminology. Or do. I don't care. Story 1. Personal story. A family member of mine who was struggling with mental health issues, thank extreme paranoia and anger, decided one day that they had had enough of the rest of the family lying to them and made threats against the family before they left to try to buy a gun. The clerk at the gun store was a family friend who realized something was off as her family never really cared about guns. We didn't have a need for them. So the clerk started probing and asked my relative what had caused the sudden interest in firearms. My relative, bless their soul, looked straight at the clerk and said, "Oh, well, I want one in case a wildcat comes by my house." We live a good 300 to 400 miles away from wildcat country. The clerk realized something was wrong and, as we later learned, had quickly figured out my relative was just barely keeping it together. So they fed my relative a lie about first-time gun purchases now needing a mandatory training course and set my relative on their way. Then called the rest of the family. Disaster averted. That's kind of a scary personal story to know that a relative was doing something like that. I don't know where I land on all the gun issues. I think it's a complex and nuanced issues, but for the most part, I'm not a big fan of them and having them around. But boy, oh boy, if I thought that a family member who was having those kind of issues was then trying to buy a gun, I'd probably be a little worried. I hope that you're okay. Story 2. Had a similar occurrence to story 4. A couple walk-ins looking at guns and are helped by a coworker. The guy asked things like, which gun is the best for killing people? The coworker awkwardly tells him any gun can kill. The guy picks out one he wants, to which the coworker flat out refuses to sell him, and has to explain that you can't just ask those sorts of questions and be surprised they won't sell to you. Both people start yelling and screaming in his face and threaten to kill him once he gets off work. They leave, then come back a bit later to scream some more before being escorted out by a manager. About 20 minutes later, we had a call from another gun store up the road telling us not to sell anything to a couple fitting the description of the couple that came in. Can I just say, I am all for any gun control law that keeps people like that from buying guns. Because a gun is a very serious thing, and if you're gonna joke about it, then you can't cross a line, and that line is not very far out there. So, this is gonna be a tough one. Story 3. I've worked for multiple stores, big and small, selling firearms. I worked with a guy who was one of the nicest people I knew, always made you smile, and was a joy to work with. One day I had a gentleman want to buy an old used shotgun and asked me to check the choke of the barrel. The choke is like a funnel per se that affects the spread of the shot. I go and grab her gauge and check. I told the gentleman it was a cylinder bore, no funneling, because someone had sawn down the barrel at some point and took off that part. The gentleman started making quite the fuss about this and kept ranting about how the barrel said it was a certain choke while I kept showing him the gauge. Hearing the commotion, this super friendly coworker walks out and asks politely if he can help with something. This guy goes off about the choke issue. My coworker simply tells him what I said in the first place. The gentleman responds with, "You don't know your job, I could do better." He was foreign, so forgive his grammar. The room went ice cold as I saw my nice coworker clench his jaw. My first thought was, he's gonna kill him. Thankfully, he only reached across the table and took the shotgun and said, "I'm sorry, there's not going to be a sale today." The gentleman attempted to scoff, but it came out as a squeak for some reason and walked off laughing at us. See, I like this story because it's really just a, sales associate of some type getting to just tell off a customer that they don't like. And you don't get those opportunities often enough in sales. You always have to be nice. The customer's always right, blah, blah, blah. Well, there are those times where a customer crosses a line and you're able to just go, goodbye, and it feels so good. So, I like this story. Story 4. Got a happy short story for you. I walked into a local gun shop I frequent every month or so for ammo, and they were selling a gun to an old lady. I thought it was kind of cool that this 70-plus-year-old lady was buying a handgun, and then it went from cool to hilarious. I was getting my ammo from the clerk at the ammo counter when I overheard her say, "What kind of ammo do I need for pest control with this?" The store owner said, "410 birdshot." My head turns around to see that this lady was buying a freaking Taurus Judge. For those that don't know, it's basically a big butt revolver that shoots shotgun shells. I couldn't help but laugh with the ammo clerk as she walked out with her new gun, case in one hand, cane in the other. Effing love this country sometimes. Story 5. Fun story. Once upon a time, I worked in a pawn shop that also sold brand new guns, so that was a majority of our sales. One day, this older man came in and wanted to buy a pistol. We got his ID and ran a background check, which was immediately denied. That's unusual. Normally, when someone is approved, it would come back fast, but when they were denied, it could take a while to get it back. We told him it was denied, and he got his ID and quickly left. He seemed to be in a hurry, which was also strange. Not 5 minutes after he left, 2 police cars came screaming into the parking lot. They came in with their hands on their weapons, asking if we had seen this man. Apparently, he had his wife locked up at the house and was on a mission to buy a gun to execute her. Story 6. Never worked in a gun shop, but had a friend who did something stupid and got himself a felony. Somehow only ended up with house arrest, not sure how. After completing his house arrest, paying his fines, etc., all of his firearms were transferred to me with the agreement in place beforehand that after his daughter's 18th birthday, I would take her to a gun shop, sell the guns, and the money was to be used to help her pay for college. Fast forward to the day after the firearms were transferred into my name. He calls me up and tells me that now that he is off house arrest, fines paid, etc., that I can transfer all the guns into his wife's name after not only did the gun shop owner, but also his PO that under no circumstances was it legal for me to transfer any of the firearms to anyone who lives in the same residence as him or anyone who might give him access to them while he was standing right there. Needless to say, the day after her graduation, we sold them all and the money helped her get books and so forth to begin her college education. Just, why? Why do people have to be like that? Like, hey, can you do this thing for me that, so we're following the law, and then, like, after you do this stuff, it's like, okay, but now secretly break the law for me. No, you're the one in trouble for all this crap. Why? No, just do the thing that you're supposed to do. I mean, good Lord, someone skipped part of that story and is just listening to my comment. There is no context. I'm just rambling, but this kind of stuff just frustrates me. Story 7. I worked in a gun shop in southern New Hampshire. In addition to this, I'm a recovered alcoholic, been sober over 25 years, and a disabled veteran. One morning around 10 a.m., a man came in who was so drunk I could smell him before he got to the counter. The smell was so bad, it kind of triggered me, and I had to ask my manager to deal with the man. The guy was even drunker than I suspected because he wanted us to buy his 5-year-old rifle at new/mint value, cash, which we never did anyways. His face was completely flushed and his eyes were running. I know what being grossly drunk looks like. He drove to the shop in that condition, the manager told him to leave, and may have called the cops on him. Story 8. I used to work at a family-owned gun shop, and I was accused of being racist after dying a sale because the guy kept making jokes about killing people with the gun he was looking at. The best part is, I'm a Latino male, and this was also a Latino male. Story 9. Worked in a gun shop. People were upset with me that I had to run a background check on a long gun. Had a guy reaching at me to get my attention, had guys and his fellow hotboxing in the parking lot. Had an ATF wanted guy come in. Many fun stories to share over the years. Story 10. Had a dude covered in blood refusing to give me a real ID trying to buy the, quote, biggest gun you have. Had to make a police report when the guy ditched his bloody clothes and ran from the cop I called. Fun day. Story 11. I work as a sporting goods associate at my local Walmart. Had a guy come in wanting a 4570 government Henry lever action. Nothing suspicious. He goes through the 4473, comes back to me, instantly denied. So I explained to him that it was denied, and for legal reasons, I can't tell him why. Give or take an hour and a half, and I'm going to lunch, and my friend, who's also a sporting goods associate, texted me that a couple is wanting to buy the exact same rifle. Now, this next part may be a little off because he ran this once, but he asked the man if he was related to the gentleman from before. He mumbles under his breath but says he wants it for himself. So he goes through the 4473 and comes to find out, yes, he was in fact the prior man's father, same last name and address apparently. So he calls two managers over and they explain everything, and the two get upset at him for apparently they did inform him that they were the guy's parents. So long story short, a 30-something-year-old man called or went home and begged mommy and daddy to get him a gun because he got denied, and they in turn also got denied. Bobby, Daddy, the beach bandit, the Walmart said that I'm not allowed to have a guy because I did some bad things itself, but I just want a gun really bad. Will you go get the gun from me? What is wrong with his parents, too? That they actually went and tried to get... Story 12. If you have any aspirations to do anything illegal and you don't want to get caught before you're done, you intend to survive it, and you do not intend to go to prison for it, never discuss any part of it with anyone if it isn't strictly necessary. Don't ask oblique questions about it on forums. Don't write a manifesto. Don't even search for any items you need online. All of this can either be used to catch you before you do it or identify you after the fact. The moment you talk about how you want to do bad thing, you are no longer able to do bad thing. Story 13. For the third story, I definitely have to say that OP made the right call, because the father giving his son a thankfully unloaded firearm and the son pointing the gun at OP and attempting to shoot at him is a massive red flag. Especially since you can imagine what would happen when that kid turns into a teenager with anger issues, and that father would be so irresponsible with having a loaded and easily accessible firearm. There are a lot of problems that would happen because of that. Story 14. Didn't work at a store, but went to buy ammo at Dick's once and ended up getting the clerk removed from that particular section. I asked for 7mm Mauser. He brought back 7mm regular magazine. I said, that's not the same. It wouldn't even fit. But if it did, I would blow the gun up right next to my face. It says 7mm. It's the same. What is your exact expertise that landed you behind the gun counter at Dick's? I wanted the extra $2 and passed the background check? Get a manager. No, better yet, give me a store manager. You're going to get people killed. When I explained what the kid said to the manager, the kid was relieved on the spot. Sorry, kid, that's one department you're better off saying, I don't know, than insisting you do. Probably did that kid a favor. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I've been in sales for multiple weird things like hardware stuff and, certain electronics and everything, and usually I'm pretty knowledgeable about those things, but sometimes when customers were asking about things slightly outside of my expertise, I might bend the truth a little bit, or whatever. If they seemed relatively confident, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. But, not gonna do that with, a machine designed to kill things. Don't do that. Just, if you don't know, please don't work with guns. Story 15. LOL. So I have a reverse situation. There's a gun shop that I visit for ammo and the occasional transfer. Everyone working the shop open carries, which is a fairly common trend around gun shops in general around here. There's a new kid working the counter handling transfers. I'm filling out the 4473 as per usual, and then the kid in front of me draws his sidearm, holds it down against his leg, and yells something I didn't process at whoever just entered the door behind me. I'm literally like, what the F is going on? I turn around and it's another one of the shop workers with a box or bag of food. My brain catches up and I realize the kid said something to the tune of, you better share that, in a joking manner. They laugh it off, kid reholsters his handgun, and I complete my paperwork and get the F out. I was a hair from pulling my own CCW, but my intuition said things weren't adding up. Didn't go to that shop for years after that incident. Story 16. I work in a large retailer. I didn't work at the gun counter, but I did help them out a lot. We have problems with sketchy people because of the major drug problem here and the constant flow of out-of-staters. A lady came in wanting to buy a Glock. I saw this and thought nothing of it. I then saw her talk to two other guys walking around the store. The two guys left and the lady said she was gonna get a drink from the dollar store next door while her background check went through. I then saw her walk to an SUV and get money from one of the two guys. I told the manager and was instructed to keep an eye on her. After she came back, she talked to a third guy in the store. My manager decided to deny the sale and tell her that it was delayed because of government BS. She looked sad and went to the SUV and handed the money back. They got out of the car and went to another car across the lot where she talked to the third guy, and a fourth guy got out of a car and talked to them both. They then all left going in separate directions. We reported her to ATF and blacklisted her. I mean, I know there's some people who say like, if you put more regulations on buying guns or something, people still find ways to get guns, but man, if they're all as competent as these people, I think we're pretty safe. Just running these just janky operations. Boy, oh boy. Story 17. I worked at this old gun store in Texas, and one day a guy comes in asking for a gun made in Texas. Look, there's tons of people who buy as much Texas-made stuff as possible, so no red flag. Before I handed him the rifle, I was curious as to why he wants a Texas-made gun. He says that he heard if you're a felon, you can buy a gun as long as it's made in Texas. I pulled the gun away before he could grab it. The owner overheard him and kicked him out. Story 18. I worked at a counter that had a couple guys looking at a Beretta 92 FS, and one day, hey, this one has porting. I got the gun back and said, no, it doesn't. They decided they wanted 9mm ammo, so I opened the case so they could see. They asked me if I had any ammo that would defeat body armor. I told them no and took the ammo back and locked it up and kicked them out. I had an older man on Black Friday come in and tell me he wanted a cheap .22 single-action pistol. When told him he had to do the paperwork on the computer, he informed me that he was not doing it. He has never done paperwork on a gun and wasn't on this one either, and then told me I could do it. I told him I couldn't. He had to do it. He screams at me, "You're a effing a-hole." I simply smile and say, "Thank you, have a good day." Another time had a man put down he was a felon on the 4473, then come back with an ex-wife to buy the same gun 2 hours later. Had a woman come in with 2 kids, and one of the kids was like, "Yeah, this one is small enough, it would fit in your backpack so you can take it to school with you." That was a quick no. Hey, dear lady who was saying you'd buy like a gun for your kid that would fit in their backpack so they could take it with you to school, like, I get it. You were probably thinking that for their protection because of school shootings, which are terrifying and tragic. Giving your child a gun to keep in their backpack is not the solution. You absolute... I can't think of a good word that isn't too mean. Story 19. I had an older man come in, he was in his 60s at least, and walked with a cane, had to limp to one side. He comes up and started asking questions about 22s and what would the best 22 be. I said it depends on what you're looking to do with it. He says he wants a cheap, reliable 22 rifle, so I say you can't beat a Ruger 1022 for that. Here's a reason why it's as popular as it is. He says he already has one, but it's broken and needs to be fixed, and asks if we provide gunsmith services. I tell him I'm sorry, but we don't, as we don't have a gunsmith. He says, don't worry about it, I'll just buy a new one then, and asks to look at one of our 1022s. I hand him the rifle, he checked it out, no issues, no red flags so far. He then lays the rifle on the counter and says, "So here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to cut the barrel off down to about here, about half the length of a 1022, and store it in my truck, and I'm going to shoot the next mother effer that pees me off in traffic." I just stand there taking this in and say, "Okay then, let me put this in our back room and go get the paperwork from my manager's office since we ran out earlier and she was printing some new ones." That was an obvious lie to anyone that knows how 4473s work, but I got the firearm away from him and secured promptly went back and told my manager what just went down. She reviewed the security footage, which has audio for the gun desk, and makes a bolo report to all the other stores in our chain and places him on a do not sell list. We walk back out together and tell the man we cannot sell him a firearm due to the comments he made. He starts yelling about how he has a right to buy a gun and we're violating our rights. Law enforcement was notified and he left, stating he will just buy it somewhere else. Story 20. I used to help run LTC classes in Texas, specifically during range qualification. I only ever saw one guy who was so incompetent I had to inform him we wouldn't be able to give him his approval paperwork. He gave me weird vibes during the classroom portion to start, but we gave him the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe he was just your garden variety weird. He looked like your typical basement dweller, but that's beside the point. You could barely keep a few rounds on paper. The shooting part isn't especially hard. We had old women do just fine. Wouldn't listen to repeated instruction on proper gun safety, etc. You didn't seem like a skull shooter type, just not the type of guy you'd want walking around with a gun. I pray another class down the line didn't pass him, lol. Story 21. I don't have anything as interesting as most of these. I only did it for a year, but I did deny one sale. They were adamant it wasn't a straw sale. The guy that tried to buy it and got denied tried to have his mom buy it for him on the same visit. I've had a few denied through a NICS background check, but that was the only one I personally denied. However, I did have some come up in crime scenes I handed over info for. It was just so tame up until the very end, where you're all just like, I had to deny someone a sale once. I heard some other sales denied everything. I did have to turn over evidence for guns I sold that ended up in crime scenes, though. Whew, you really buried the lead. Story 22. Recently had a guy who talked really fast and weird, tried to put a pistol on layaway, for some reason thinking that we would let him take it then after only paying a fraction of the value, and with only his word that he would come back to pay the rest. He was from out of state anyway, so it was illegal for us to sell him one. I think he bought into the whole Texas gives guns to everyone meme. Although we are a lot more open to tactical questions than most of these stories, the natural predators of humans are other humans. Of course, this is within reason and legality, no felons, teardrop tattoos, or clowns. We got some real geniuses out there trying to buy guns. I'm so glad that these people are trying to get guns. I trust them with guns because of the way that they're acting when they try to get guns. I see no problems with this, and it doesn't make me nervous. Story 23. Another one from our area, a criminal ordered a gun online, had it sent to a shop that did transfers. Many online retailers have dealers saved in a system where you put in your zip code and it shows the dealers in your area. When it was denied in the background check, he blamed the owner, said he had to give him his money back for the gun. Owner told him, "Sorry, you didn't pay me for this gun, you'll have to call the people you ordered it from." The thug came back to the shop later with a friend. They shot and killed the owner, also shot his brother, putting him in critical condition. Story 24. I've never sold a gun, but I have been denied due to being too honest about something I didn't think too much about, lol. I was born and raised in the South and have handled many firearms in my 22 years. Well, when I was turning 18, my buddy, God bless him for it, offered to buy a cheap break-action 410 gauge shotgun for me as a birthday present. Well, we were just sitting there talking with the seller, talking and killing time, and he asked what made me want to get a gun, and I very casually let slip that my friend who was standing right next to me offered to buy it for me for my birthday, laughed my friggin' butt off. Yes, I know, there's like 800 things wrong on paper here in every direction between paperwork, payment, legalities, and such, but again, growing up in the rural South, it wasn't anything too abnormal for me to think twice about. Story 25. Never worked in a gun shop, but they denied my simple request for a plasma rifle, needle pistol, fuel rod cannon, even one sell me a CSO supercarrier. It's like they want the humans to desecrate the holy rings unopposed. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.